Chapter 1. The Loom of Shadows. The iron-bound chest in the corner of the room was always locked, yet its contents weighed heavier than the stone foundation of the tower. Outside, the cold autumn wind swept through the mountain pass of Valen, carrying the scent of dead leaves and frozen rain. But inside the small chamber, the air was entirely motionless, trapped in a permanent yesterday. Old Master Raymond sat in his high-backed wooden chair, his eyes fixed on the cold stone floor. He was a legendary captain of the watch, a man who had successfully defended the border fortress for 40 years. He was decorated with silver medals, and his tactical journals were studied by every young cadet in the Empire. Yet, Raymond was a ghost living in his own body. His hair was stark white, his eyes were hollow, and his hands were permanently curled into fists. Raymond was not fighting the Northern Raiders tonight. He was fighting a single winter night from 10 years ago. It was the night he had ordered the Lower Valley Bridge to be burned to prevent an invasion, a tactical decision that had saved the fortress, but had left a dozen stranded families to freeze in the mountains. The decision was logical, approved by the Senate, and necessary, yet it had become an iron cage around his soul. If only the scouts had arrived an hour earlier. Raymond whispered to the dark corners of the room, his voice dry, repetitive, and broken. If only I had deployed the heavy cavalry to hold the ridge for just one more hour. Those families would be alive today. Their blood is on my seals. I ruined them. I am a monster masquerading as a hero. He was spending his limited remaining years spinning a loom of shadows. He wasn't living in the room with the warm hearth. He was living a decade in the past, repeatedly screaming commands at an army that had already turned to dust, trying desperately to rewrite a script that had already been carved into stone. From the shadow near the wooden bookshelf stood Theron, a traveling physician and scholar who had spent his life studying the wounds of the mind. He wore a simple, unadorned wool cloak, his posture completely relaxed, his hands steady as he carefully sorted dried herbs on a small tray. He had been listening to Raymond's bitter confessions for 3 long nights. "You are trying to cross a river that has already dried up, Raymond," Theron said, his voice deep, slow, and unshakable. "The bridge is burned, the winter has passed, and the bones of those families have already become part of the mountain earth. Yet, you are still standing on that frozen riverbank, shivering in the dark. You have abandoned the living world to become a slave to a phantom." Raymond looked up, his face flashing with a sudden, defensive fury. "A phantom. Those were living souls, Theron. My decision caused their end. To forget them, to live in peace while they are gone, that is the act of a heartless coward. My regret is the only punishment I can offer them." Theron set his herbs down and walked over to the old captain's desk. "Your punishment does not bring them back, Raymond. It merely ensures that you die before your heart stops beating. Your remorse is not an act of justice, it is an act of supreme arrogance. You believe your tears can change the laws of time." Chapter 2. The Sealed Book. Raymond slammed his fist onto the wooden armrest. "You speak with the coldness of a philosopher. Scholar. You have never held the seal that seals a man's doom. The guilt is alive. It lives in my chest every morning. How can a man look at his own past mistakes and not bleed?" Theron reached into his leather bag and pulled out a large, heavy leather-bound ledger. The pages were completely blank, but the book was wrapped in thick, rusted iron chains secured by a heavy bronze lock. He dropped it with a dull thud right onto the center of Raymond's desk. "Open it," Theron commanded softly. Raymond stared at the locked chains. "I cannot." "It is locked, and the key is not here." "Exactly." Theron nodded, his eyes locking onto Raymond's tired gaze. "This book represents your past. Every word inside it has already been written, the ink has dried, and the book has been chained by fate. You cannot open it, you cannot erase a single line, and you cannot add a new sentence to explain your actions. Yet, look at your hands. You are spending your entire night tearing at these iron chains, bloodying your fingers, trying to open a book that cannot be changed." Theron leaned forward, his voice carrying the weight of a mountain. The Stoic sages taught us that of all the delusions of the human mind, regret is the most foolish. Anxiety fears what might happen, but regret fights what has already happened. It is a war against reality itself. Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather wish that what happens happens the way it happens. Then you will be happy. The event is gone, Raymond. It belongs to the universe now. By clinging to your guilt, you are committing a daily treason against the present hour. "But if I don't feel regret, am I not a monster?" Raymond whispered, his voice cracking, the anger melting into a raw, bleeding vulnerability. "Am I just supposed to say it is what it is and feel nothing? You are supposed to learn, not bleed." Theron replied gently, his voice dropping into that deep, meditative rhythm of the inner citadel. "An error is a teacher lent to you by fate to refine your wisdom today. When a captain loses a ship to a hidden reef, he does not sit on the shore for 10 years, weeping and hitting the sand. He studies the chart, he notes the location of the rock, and he takes the wheel of the next ship with a wiser hand. You are using your past mistake not to become a wiser leader, but to justify your own paralysis." Chapter 3. The anatomy of the script. Theron picked up a small piece of charcoal and drew a single, thick black square on the desk. He placed a small bronze weight inside the square. "This square is your control circle," Theron said, pointing to the weight. "It holds your thoughts right now, your choices today, and the way you treat the young soldiers under your command tomorrow. This is the only space where you possess the power of a god. You can move the weight, you can change the direction, you can build or destroy." He then reached out and swept his hand across the wide, empty space outside the square. "This is the realm of fate," the old scholar whispered. "It holds the weather, the actions of your enemies, the decisions of the Senate, and above all, yesterday. Yesterday is completely outside this square. It has the same status as the stars or the deep ocean. It is an unchangeable absolute. When you spend your energy feeling bitter, ruminating on what you should have done, you are taking your limited power out of the square and throwing it into the void. You are letting the phantom of a dead day destroy the real lives of the men who are looking to you for leadership right now." Theron leaned closer to the old captain. "Every time your mind begins to loop into regret, you must apply the clinical knife of reason. Ask yourself, can my anger or my sorrow alter a single second of that night? If the answer is no, then the regret is not a virtue, it is a sickness. It is the ego refusing to accept that it is human, that it makes mistakes, and that it cannot command the past. Forgive yourself for being a human creature, Raymond. The universe has already moved on. Why haven't you? Chapter 4. The Trial of the Guard. 2 weeks later, winter arrived early in the pass of Valen. A sudden, vicious blizzard swept down from the northern peaks, burying the valley under 3 feet of snow and ice. And the outer watchtowers were cut off from the main fortress, and the fuel supplies in the lower barracks were dangerously low. In the middle of the night, a panicked messenger rode into the camp, his face white with frost and panic. "Sir, the secondary guard post on the western ridge has been cut off by an avalanche. There are 8 young recruits trapped in the snow tower. The mountain wind is freezing the doors shut. If we don't send a rescue team through the blizzard immediately, they will freeze to death before dawn." The young lieutenant looked at Raymond with wide, desperate eyes, waiting for a quick tactical decision. For a split second, the old phantom, the crushing weight of regret, stormed the gates of Raymond's mind. The scenario was terrifyingly similar to the night from 10 years ago. The snow, the trapped lives, the choice between risk and safety. His heart began to hammer against his ribs, and his mind threatened to freeze, trapped in a loop of historical terror. What if I fail again? What if I send men into the storm and they all die? What if I am cursed to repeat my ruin? But Raymond looked down at his desk. He saw the heavy, locked chains of the iron book. He remembered Theron's clinical words, "Yesterday belongs to death. Today belongs to your choice." He took a deep, steady breath of the cold air, forcing his mind to step back from the edge of the future. He didn't ask, "Why is this happening to me again?" He asked, "What is the factual reality in front of my boots right now?" The red fog of memory receded, leaving a cold, razor-sharp, and mathematical clarity. "Lieutenant," Raymond's voice cut through the howling wind like an iron axe striking wood. It was not the voice of a broken ghost. It was the voice of a commander who had found his center. The avalanche blocked the main path, but the old smuggler's tunnel beneath the western ridge is made of solid granite. It cannot be collapsed by snow alone. Get 30 men with iron shovels and heavy wool blankets. We do not cross the open ridge. We move through the mountain tunnel. I will lead the front line myself. Now, move. The lieutenant's eyes lit up with sudden hope. The emotional contagion of the old captain's unshakable stillness instantly swept through the room, replacing panic with disciplined focus. Chapter 5. The Clean Slate. The march through the dark granite tunnel was a descent into a cold purgatory. The air was thin, and the sound of the mountain groaning under the weight of the snow echoed through the stone passages. Raymond walked at the front, his old muscles aching from the unaccustomed strain, his breath rising in white plumes into the darkness. Every time his body wanted to fail, every time the old guilt tried to whisper, "You are too late," just like before. He ruthlessly dropped the narrative and focused entirely on the fact, my feet are moving. The shovel is in my hand. By the time they reached the western ridge tower, the snow had completely buried the lower levels. Working with a desperate, clinical precision, Raymond and his men dug through the white wall, smashing the frozen iron hinges of the tower door with a heavy iron mallet. The door burst open. Inside, the 8 young recruits were huddled together near a cold brazier, shivering and frostbitten, but alive. Not a single life had been lost. The young soldiers looked up at the old captain as if he were a god who had descended from the heavens to shatter their graves. As Raymond helped a young, trembling recruit wrap a heavy wool blanket around his shoulders, the boy looked into his eyes with profound gratitude. "Thank you, Captain. We thought you would abandon us. We thought we were forgotten." Raymond looked at the boy's living face, and for the first time in 10 winters, a deep, silent, and ecstatic warmth washed over his soul. The old iron cage around his chest didn't just open, it shattered into 1,000 pieces. He realized that his past mistake had not made him a monster, it had made him the exact man who possessed the specific wisdom to save these boys tonight. The past had been a brutal teacher, but the harvest of that teaching was alive in this room. When they returned to the main fortress at dawn, the sun was breaking through the gray winter clouds, illuminating the white mountains in a brilliant, blinding silver light. Raymond walked into his chamber, his limbs heavy with exhaustion, his face chapped by the frost. Theron was sitting by a roaring fire, sipping hot pine tea. He looked up at the old captain's face and saw that the hollow, haunted look was completely gone. Raymond's eyes were clear, steady, and fixed entirely on the light of the morning. Raymond walked over to his desk, picked up the iron, chained ledger Theron had left there weeks ago, and handed it back to the old scholar. "Take your book, Theron," Raymond said, his voice deep, unhurried, and full of an unshakable peace. "I finally stopped trying to break the chains. I don't need to rewrite the old pages anymore, because you realized the ink is dead." Theron smiled. "Because I realized that the only page I can write is the one I am standing on today," Raymond replied, and walking over to the window to watch the young soldiers laughing in the courtyard below. "The past can keep its ghosts, Theron. My life belongs to the living hour." Keep your mind fixed on the present hour and leave what is past to the past and what is future to the future. Raymond took a deep breath of the cold winter air. The past was unchangeable, the future was unknown, but as he stood straight against the wind, he knew he was finally free. Most of us spend our lives trapped in the prison of regret. We sit in the dark rooms of our minds, endlessly repeating old conversations, weeping over broken relationships, and bleeding from mistakes we made years ago. We allow the dead ink of yesterday to poison the living waters of today, acting as if our sorrow could somehow alter the laws of time. Keenly remember that regret is a war against reality, a war you will lose every single time. The next time your mind begins to drift into the graveyard of should, have beens, stop. Take a deep breath, look at the reality of the tool in your hands right now, and say to your soul, "The book is locked." Forgive your human limitations, accept the raw material that fate has carved into your history, and spend your limited energy only on the virtue of the present hour. The past is dust, the present is your forge. This is NeoAurelium, transmission on the ultimate victory over regret. Stay unshakable. Take care of yourself.